Welcome back. All right, so we are going to talk about the Dallas Stars and the Dallas Stars' upcoming season and expectations. Now, expectations coming into last season, well, they were coming off of a Stanley Cup final run. So the expectation was they'd at least make the playoffs, and they didn't. And so now Dallas has to show that that was the one off and not the run to the Stanley Cup final, right? They have to show, hey, that team that missed the playoffs wasn't the real us. The one that went on that nice run, who had a pretty good season, that's the real us. So we'll see which Dallas Stars show up and how many goaltenders can they have in the net at one time. Might be an interesting question. But again, it's going to be an interesting season for Dallas. Now, their special teams numbers from this past season would tell you their power play at 23.6%, fifth overall, was really good. It was at times. At times it was absolutely lights out fantastic, and at other times they go through droughts. So we'll see how the consistency works out for them this year. Penalty kill 79.1%, which was 19th. Does need to be better. As I've said with other teams in the Central, there were some really good power plays in the Central Division that even though Dallas is still in a division called the Central, they don't have to worry about Tampa, Florida, or Carolina this coming year. So their penalty kill should get better. Goals for, they were 18th overall with 156. So they want to improve that, but that being said, that's actually better than they had been in recent seasons. Goals against, they were 8th overall in the NHL with 148. Their defense, their goaltending, both solid for them, as is usually the case with Dallas, right? Now, the notable draft picks show you how kind of all over the place they can be when it comes to draft picks. Drafting Gurianov at 12th overall in 2015. They draft Rope Hintz at 49th. So Hintz was a steal. 2016, they drafted Tufte at 25th. He's still in the organization, so there's still the opportunity that maybe he earns his way into the lineup. But I would say those odds are not great. 2017, Heiskanen was drafted 3rd. Ottinger was drafted 26th. And Robertson was drafted 39th. So this was a pretty good draft, the 2017 one, right? That they get Robertson in the second round, who is a good dynamic top six forward. Ottinger, who looks like he's going to be their starting goalie at some point soon. And Heiskanen at number 3, a dynamic, fantastic defenseman who will get a lot of minutes for Dallas this coming season. 2018, they drafted Delandry at 13th. 2019, they drafted Harley at 18th. 2020, they drafted Maverick Bourque at 30th. And this past year, well, in 2021, they had 10 draft picks this year. So we'll see how things go. We'll see how things go for them. But again, their drafting does kind of have some issues, at least outside the first round. And, well, we'll see how things turn out, right? As always. So the exits from this year, a couple of large ones, and I mean physically large when you're talking about Jamie Alexiak. He's out. He's gone to Seattle, signed a 4-year deal. Dickinson has gone to Vancouver. He signed a 3-year deal with the Canucks. Cogliano, Dowling, Pesic are also players who've left. In order to try to replace what they've lost, Glendening comes in. He'll be taking a lot of faceoffs. He'll be playing a similar role to what Dickinson did. Raffle comes in as a bottom 6 forward. Borgman on the blue line. Hakanpää on the blue line. I think Dallas fans are going to like Hakanpää. Suter also comes in to help out the defense. And Braden Holtby. In what was really a head-scratcher at the time, but I get it. I get it because Bishop is supposed to start the season on the IR. There's a reason that Seattle did not touch Bishop's contract or just bring the player in to be one of their goalies, because I think it's understood he may not play for a while, and then it's a matter of he's going to have been out for so long. How effective is he going to be when he comes back, right? So the forward group that's going to be tasked with making Dallas relevant this year is as follows. You have Benn, Seguin, Radulov. Now, Benn, Seguin, and Radulov, the 3 big names up front, but in Benn's case, the production is lower than what it was, right? And we don't expect him to get back to point a game necessarily. Seguin only played 3 games during the regular season. How ready is he going to be? How many games is he going to play this year? You don't know until that schedule gets running, right? And Radulov, who also struggled with injuries this past year. I'm mildly surprised Radulov's still in Dallas, but you know what? When he played last year, he actually played pretty well. And so we'll see whether or not those 3 guys can stay healthy and produce. You've got Robertson, Hintz, and Pavelski then as your support. Pavelski had a fantastic season for Dallas. Rope Hintz continues to improve every year, and Robertson was in the running for the Calder. I agree with Kaprizov getting the Calder over Robertson. I also say, you know what? Going forward, Robertson, I think, can get to that level. We'll see. Then you have Como, Foxa. Foxa, I think, can produce more than he has to this point in his career. And Gurianov, whose production has been up and down, but he should be a 20-25 goal scorer. Kivi Ranta, the heroic playoff performance aside, Kivi Ranta, I think, is going to be an excellent Swiss Army knife type player that can play up and down your lineup, play any role you want him to. Glendening, Raffle, of course, rounding things out there. And then you've got Tanner Carroll. Carroll had a very good year. When he was thrown into situations where he had to play, he played well. Kamano, I like Kamano, although I don't know that there's any offense there from him. Delandria might force himself into the conversation in training camp and maybe push somebody else out of a job. Gardner, L'Esperance. L'Esperance has been a good fill-in. Tufty and Masharon also rounding things out there with Riley Tufty and Adam Masharon being two guys who've got a lot of attention at different points in time, but not at the NHL level as of yet. Now on the blue line, it's interesting in that you've got Esa Lindell, you've got John Klingberg, Ryan Suter, and Miro Heiskanen. And that top four, I think, is very, very solid. And I think if Dallas has a tremendous level of success this year, it's going to be driven by that blue line. You've then got Sekera, you've got Hakanpää to round out the top six, but Thomas Harley could make things interesting as well. Now, it's going to depend on Harley getting in there, and then who does he push out? Odds are it's going to have to be an injury that gets him in there. Hanley has been useful when they've needed him. Borgman, Petrovic also in there as well. Both of them veteran fill-in players on the blue line. And then in net, your guess is as good as mine what's going to happen here. Hudobin, Holtby, Bishop, Ottinger. So, yeah, this is going to be very, very interesting. We have in Bishop a goaltender is likely starting the year on the IR. Holtby, you've got a goaltender coming off of back-to-back underperforming seasons, the most recent in Vancouver. The year before that in Washington also being one where he was down statistically, and he admits he didn't play well as last year in Washington as well. And Hudobin, who I thought didn't play as well this past year as he did the year prior. And so I don't know how much I would want him necessarily to be starting a whole lot of games over an 82-game schedule. Hudobin, I think your best bet is to have him in like 35 games and somebody else getting the lion's share of games. And that's where I think Ottinger is set up to eventually have that spot. Bringing in Holtby tells me that they envision Ottinger as probably being better off at the AHL level to start with. And then maybe bring him up during the season and we'll see what happens. The goaltending, if it's Hudobin and Holtby, that's where I have concern about whether or not it's going to be good enough to get them into the playoffs in what should be a very competitive Central Division. Prospects, I just put Maverick Bourque. A lot of their young players who are notables here are already in the lineup, already been getting games, or they're going to. So Maverick Bourque is the one interesting prospect to me who might come in and jump in up front and do something for him. But not this year, obviously. It's not going to be this year. Stanley Cup odds have Dallas at 35-1. Which to me seems pretty good for a team that missed the playoffs last year. Their last Stanley Cup, of course, 1999. And that's a long time ago now. And we'll see whether or not they can get back to that. I don't envision them as being cup contenders, but that's okay. The funny part is that when they are, you're like, see, they proved you wrong. How do you feel now? Pretty good. I like Dallas. Dallas was the first favorite team, really. Vancouver was the home team that, as a little kid, I knew I had to cheer for. Dallas, who were then the Minnesota North Stars, I just really liked the North Stars. I thought they were a lot of fun to watch, and they went to the Stanley Cup final, and they had a top scorer named Dino, and I love the Flintstones, so, right there. So, I have them, I'm predicting that they're going to finish 5th in the Central Division, which, again, could very well mean finishing ahead of 4th place in the Pacific and bumping that team out of the playoffs and giving that second wildcard spot to Dallas. Because I really do think the Central is better than the Pacific. I don't think I'm telling any tales by saying so either. So the schedule to start with for Dallas, it's interesting, but it's not that daunting. So when we look at this overall, So they start off on the 14th in New York against the Rangers. They then play Boston in Boston on the 16th. So as I said in the Boston preview, looking forward to that. That should be fun. The 17th, they're then at Ottawa. So there's back-to-backs and then one day off before they play in Pittsburgh on the 19th. So that's 3 games in 4 nights. It's a tough way to start the season, and we'll see how things look for them coming out of that 4-game road trip. Then they come home, they play against LA on the 22nd, so they get a couple of days off before that. Then they get a couple of days off before they play in Columbus, and then it's 1 day off before they play at home against Vegas, and on the 29th, they're at home against Ottawa. It's an interesting overall roster. I think that for Dallas, I don't forecast them as necessarily being as good as they were in 2020 when they got to a Stanley Cup final. They finished third in their division and avoided having to worry about the play-in round. But at the same time, I think that what we saw from them last year was just those 14 overtime and shootout loss points. All of them hurt. All of them hurt because it just felt like nothing was going Dallas's way. But again, because they got 14 of them, it kept them artificially close to the playoffs. They only won 23 out of 56 games. So this is a team that definitely needed to make some improvements. Jim Nill's going to argue they've made those improvements. Have they? A lot of the improvement would come from having guys healthy, which with Dallas was tricky last year. We'll see if that remains tricky this year as well. So, all right, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below regarding the Dallas Stars and their place in the league and how you think this is all going to turn out for them, where you think they finish and all that. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.